Well, now it's coming through that.
Cool.
That's my buddy told me to turn this on. It's actually my buddy's band. It's a Paul Sartell.
Am I on camera?
When we did it live at Jazz Bones, I played the cowbell for him.
Oh,
They
really?
made me come up and play the cowbell. Yeah.
We need more cowbell. More cowbell.
Sounds like average weight.
Paul Sartell.
Also, yeah.
He plays here, and he's got a Grammy.
It's actually a Sammy, but yeah, we'll call it a Grammy. It's a European version.
Yeah, he's a sax player.
Yeah. He's a great sax player. Because his style is really kind of jazz.
Pop.
If you get him like trying to be pop is a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's a whole other mouthfeel.
Just reminds me.
He's played with everybody in the planet, dog. You know, he's played with some serious bands.
Hey,
Even the
hey,
guitar player
hey.
knows my guitar
It's
player.
7 o'clock. It's November the 12th, and it's time for Uncle Bob's November 2019 edition of Uncle Bob's Cigar Corner. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and I got a real exciting announcement. Thanks to my good friend Jason, he is making it possible for us to actually live stream Uncle Bob's Cigar Corner on YouTube. I think it's working. So yeah, all of you out there in the cloud, yay! Hello.
Hey.
And this month, we're going to be talking about cigar storage, which was a suggestion that came from some of the attendees last month. A reason we want to talk about storage, because it's that time of year when you actually may get, say, around Christmas time, a gift, or during the holidays, you may have a cigar or two, or 10, or 20 that you don't have time to smoke, and you got to figure out where to put them. So tonight we're going to talk about how to store cigars if you've got more cigars than you can possibly smoke on one day. And I do notice, being working up in the cigar store, that a lot of times people come in every day and they buy a day's worth of cigars, maybe 5, maybe 4, maybe 1, and then they come in again tomorrow, and you say to them, gee, you want to buy a box or you want to have some extras? And they go, no, I just smoked what I got today. And after a few conversations, you finally figure out they're only buying cigars for today because they got no place to put tomorrow's cigars. So what we're going to talk about is how to go about storing your cigars if you get a cigar box for Christmas, if you get a few friends at parties, or even cigar events where you may get more cigars than you can smoke that day. You got to have some way to keep them fresh. So if Jason will bear with me here for just a second, I am going to pull up my Uncle Bob's Cigar Corner slide deck, which, by the way, was created by Scott Duncan. Thank you, Scott, if you're listening or watching. That does help me look legit every single month, and without him, I would be stumbling over myself continually. There we go. So, and I also want to thank Miss Vicky for allowing me to do this. By the way, it was 2 years ago this month that I did the very first Uncle Bob's Cigar Corner. And we've done it every month except one in February, when it was last year when it snowed. And she's allowed me to do this as of this month right now. This is 2 years of Uncle Bob's Cigar Corner. And she hasn't figured out that I'm just wasting their space every month. But we're having fun, and we're going to keep doing it until we get kicked out. So We're really enjoying it, and it's well supported by Thunderbird Trading Post, and I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate those of you, the regulars that come in every month, and the newbies that haven't been here before. Hope we'll have something here for you that you find is worth coming back to. So, to get started, here we go. I'd like to start out with cigar storage. Why bother? So what do I do with that box that I won at the show, at the cigar event? What about the cigars I just bought, and they're in a nice little Thunderbird Ziploc bag, and somehow Uncle Bob or somebody else in the store said, you ought to try this, you ought to try that, and then you have more cigars than you can smoke that day. Or maybe you see a cigar that's really special and you want to start a collection, or you want to keep cigars because sometimes cigars get better after you've had them for a while, and you hear tales of aging cigars and how they change over time. That's all on your shoulders and up to you. Or I just normally buy one stick at a time and I want to take advantage of a sale. So for all those reasons and more, you may want to have more cigars on hand than you can buy and smoke at the T-Bird. And it might be a nice sunny day. You might want to go on a trip. Who knows? It's always good to have extra cigars around. So for the basics, I'd like to start out with what you really kind of need. For a cigar to stay healthy, it needs to be, and the easy rule is 70-70. It needs to be at a relative humidity of 70% or below, and it needs to be at 70 degrees or below. If the temperature goes up, the humidity goes up relative to the temperature. Same thing if it gets cooler. If it gets above 70 degrees, where these cigars are sitting just minding their own business and behaving, there's something inside these cigars called beetle eggs. I'd be safe to say that I've never. Hi, come on in.
Thank you, thank you.
It'd be safe to say that there's not a single cigar out there that doesn't have cigar beetle eggs in it. Cigar beetle eggs are dormant. They don't do anything. They're microscopic, but at 70 degrees, they can hatch. At 80 degrees, they will hatch. When cigar beetles hatch, they start eating the leaf, and you'll see little holes in your leaf. And they'll start spreading and procreating, and they'll ruin all the cigars in your humidor or in the box of cigars you've got. So at 70% humidity or above, like let's say somebody came in, it was a customer, thought he was supposed to keep his cigars at 80% humidity, and he kept his house at 72. So his cigars were very bitter and soggy, and they wouldn't stay lit. Well, on top of that, they were probably getting moldy. They were probably hatching cigar beetle eggs. And all of those bad things can happen. Now, what happens if you get it too dry? Well, you can actually, and I keep my cigars at about 68-69% humidity, and I try to keep them below 70 degrees temperature. Right now, they're sitting in my cigar shed at about probably 50 degrees. So they're staying on the cool side. Once again, their humidity is relatively low, and the temperature is relatively low. When I take those cigars out and I smoke them in a room, that room is probably a little bit warmer than where I had the cigars. I'm not suggesting you refrigerate them. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about that a little bit later. A wine cooler is a good place to store cigars, but the wine cooler, the nature of a wine cooler is they get too cold. They really get too cool. Cigars don't mind being a little bit cool, but when you take them out of the humidifier or the humidor and you put them in a 70-degree room, or a room that's whatever this temperature is, they start adjusting and changing to the room. They'll adjust, the wrapper will adjust first, and the inside temperature will still be cool. When there's a difference between the outside and the inside, especially on a 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 ring gauge cigar, it expands at a different rate and it'll crack its own wrapper. So I take my cigars out of whatever humidor I've got, let them sit on the ashtray for 30, 45 minutes before I light them and start smoking with them. So keep that in mind. Cigars don't like sudden change. They like to stay the way they are. And when you do change them, there's the inside and the outside, and it's just like a sponge cake. It's not going to all change at the same rate. It's going to slowly evolve. So give it a chance to do that. So some of the tools to make those things happen is we have humidifiers with water systems. Now, when I say water system, if you go out to the cigar store, you'll see that there's typically a bucket at the bottom with a fan, and those fans turn on and off depending on what the humidity is to circulate the water vapor through that system. You can get an Oasis. I think the HumiCare. There's Oasis. There's a couple of brand names that are really good. They watch the humidity, and in a large cabinet humidor, those things will bring the humidity up. But guess what the water systems don't do? If you've got 80% humidity, like in Florida, they won't bring it down at all. All they can do is make the humidity higher. They can't bring it down lower. What can bring it lower is these Boveda packs. And that's one of my favorite tools because I'm lazy and I like not having to work. I'd rather have a cigar than do anything that's work case. The Boveda packs have a chemical combination in them that if the humidity, let's say that 69%, if the humidity is 72, 73, 74%, that pack will bring the humidity in the humidor down from being too humid to 69%. If it's 65 or 66%, it'll bring it up to 69%. And I've never seen these be off more than plus or minus 1% humidity. And even if they went 2% with a 69% Boveda pack, you're pretty safe, you're carefree. They last until they finally get crispy and hard. And I'll tell you a little bit about that too. So the Boveda packs are great. And I'll tell you this, a lot of people like the wooden humidors that'll hold 50, 60, 70 cigars, and they have a little round disc in them, and you put some kind of liquid or distilled water in them. Throw that out, because all it can do is make the humidity higher. It can't make the humidity lower. And just replace it with the Boveda pack. It's just my opinion, but that's what's going to make it easier for you.
Besides that, you always those little packs, they constantly dry out. So like you put it in there, it's going to dry out in a couple days, and just you'll have to keep it watered all the time. Whereas a Boveda, you can just forget it.
Right, a Boveda is not working on the cigars; it's working on the air in your humidifier, and if you're in your humidor, if your humidor is half empty, the Boveda pack has to work harder because it's working on making the air right. If the humidor is 2/3 of the way full or closer to being full, it makes it easier for the Boveda pack to work. Typically, a Boveda pack in a 2/3 or 3/4 full humidor will last 3 to 6 months. But if you open it every day, if you have just a couple of cigars in there, if you throw some cigars in there that are really dried out and need adjusting, if you fiddle around with it every day, it's not going to last as long because the exposed air gets in and then it has to do its job again and work harder. So I wouldn't open it unless I had to. If you want long-term storage, it's ideal because who opens a long-term storage? You just wait till whenever you want one of those cigars that you're aging for a while. And I don't know if Boveda wants me to spread the word about this, but I've got Boveda packs that they're just that paper you can write on. And I've got Bovita packs that have May of 2017 written on them. That's the day I started using them, and I'm still using them. And the reason they're still good is not that they lasted that long. They lasted 6 months or so. And they get hard and crinkly and crispy. When they get hard, all the moisture's gone out of them. So I take them out of the humidor, I put them in a Ziploc bag with a cup of distilled water, and I let them sit on the kitchen counter overnight. The next morning, I towel them off and I throw them back in the humidor again. These things will last forever if you just recycle them. So this size, the typical size is, I think they're $4. They're not a big sizable investment. So you spend $4 on a tool to make a box that's going to hold 20 or 30 cigars easily. Buy 2 of them if you think you don't have enough, or if you've got more air in there, and they'll last indefinitely. You just recycle them whenever they get crinkly, and they'll come back and do their job over and over and over again. And because of that, Bovita doesn't get to sell anymore, but I end up buying them by the box load. Another important aspect of properly caring for your cigars is the location you put them in your house. If you put them under a window where the sun shines every day, it's just like in your car. They're going to get warmer, and the sun's going to warm up that box, and then at nighttime it's going to cool it down. That's undue stress because of the variation. Find a cool place that's not, typically not against an outside wall of the house, because if you go in wherever you live, whether it's a house, apartment, hotel, whatever, the outside wall is going to feel moister and colder than the inside wall. So if you can find a place to put it near an inside wall, there'll be less variation. Another thing that really changes the humidity is if you put it near an air vent. Where do we have air vents? Sometimes I think we don't.
Up here.
But ours are in the ceiling. But if you typically have an air vent like a register along the floor, or air vent that blows warm air out in the wintertime, that warm air blowing on your humidifier or humidor will really put undue stress on it. So you don't want to do that. So keep it away from the heating HVAC system, keep it away from windows, keep it off an outside wall, and just leave it be. And you'd be amazed at how easy it is to take care of these things. The other thing you want to do is you want to know what your humidity is. Now there's 2 kinds of little humidor hygrometers, they're called. One is analog, and it's a little round dial, and if you tap on it, it'll change. Those are notoriously inaccurate and pretty much useless for our purposes. If you have those, put some duct tape over it or throw it out and get a digital. The digital ones are typically calibrated within 1%. They're actually, Bovita has a calibration pack where you can calibrate and test to make sure they're within 1% or so. And they have no moving parts. One thing you do have to do every year or so is put a fresh battery in. So I forget to do that until I get so I can't hardly read them, and then I put a battery in them. But if you have one of these, and I do, you can get them for like 10 or 15 bucks. But the really nice ones have a remote Bluetooth, and you can put one in a humidor, you can have another humidor and put a second one in, and then out in the kitchen or on your refrigerator, you can have the readout in big block letters. You don't even have to go to your humidor. You just look at the readout, and it says 68 degrees, 68% humidity. You don't have to open up the humidor and stress it out. You just read that. So it's really important to have put a little bit of money into a good hygrometer, a digital hygrometer. Go with a Bovita, and there's other brand names, but the Bovita pack type thing where it brings the humidity down as well as up to keep it in the right spot, and then leave them alone and let them be Try and keep your humidors as full as possible, and your cigars will love you for it. Now, if you don't, I'll show you what'll happen. Here's a cigar that went through a lot of stress. It was in a car. It was out of the car. It was back in the car. The car was in the sun. The car was in 31 degrees the other day. And the cigar just sat there minding its own business. And this is how it ended up. And this was maybe 2 weeks that I had this cigar in a non-controlled environment. And then I brought it into a nice warm house. I put it on an airplane, and I put it down in the baggage section of the airplane, which, what is it, minus 31 degrees down there? Oh, and no air, which I guess doesn't matter, but who knows what the humidity was. And then I brought it back in to a nice house, sat it by the fireplace, just thought, oh, you're a good cigar. And I'll pass this around. This is what happens to cigars that don't get good humidification and get messed with. They don't like change at all. I'll pass that around. And if you've all seen cigars like this, it's not because they rolled them bad. It's not because the factory sucks. It's not because the manufacturer didn't do a good quality job. It's what happened to that cigar after your wallet turned over its money and you brought it home. And that's what happens. So good humidification could have, would have, should have saved that cigar. But letting it go through a rough life, that cigar is never going to be smoked, at least not by me. So that's what happens. So, what kind of money do we need to spend to have good humidification, or what kind of a humidor should I get? This first one here is called a wine cooler. You can get them for $300 or $400. Some of them are specifically designed to be able to turn off the cooling element. And keep in mind, wine coolers really, oh gee, I didn't know that I wanted that back, but thanks. Wine coolers are specifically designed not to stress out the wine, which has a lot of the same requirements as cigars. So in your refrigerator, don't ever use your refrigerator. In your refrigerator at home, that dries out the air. The air blows through and it gets very dry because they use a variant of Freon to cool the air, and it bleeds water out of it, and it'll just destroy the humidity. Wine coolers are what they call a solid state cooling device. So it lowers the temperature without affecting the air, plus they're pretty airtight. What I don't like about wine coolers is, see that little round thing right there? That little round thing right there is an analog hygrometer, and they're notoriously inaccurate, and I wouldn't count on them for anything. See you guys. Thanks for hanging in for a bit. Appreciate it. Replace those with a digital. Now, the other tall, that, by the way, that's a Remington cabinet humidor. It's called a tower. It's 6 foot high. The window of that Remington it has a cooling element in it. So if condensation forms, you know, like in your car when you need your rear window defogger, it's got those wires. That thing has those wires in it. So it will melt away any condensation caused by a difference in the temperature inside the humidor and the room temperature outside. So, and plus that's double insulated glass so that glass doesn't transfer heat in and out of the humidor. Another thing you'll notice is way up at the top, there's a built-in digital temperature and digital hygrometer that'll tell you what the humidity is inside that cooler. It also has a water system in the bottom that, in my case, I turned off because I got better results with Bovita. With the water system, it wanted to go on like every 30 minutes. It was on and off, on and off. It was always trying to adjust itself. I turned that off, threw the Bovitas in there, one per shelf, and I was good to go. Another nice thing about it is this tower humidor has heating in it, and it has air conditioning in it. So it keeps the temperature at exactly 68 degrees. And I can literally leave town for a month, and my little digital hygrometer will tell me through the Bluetooth, and my app, it'll tell me what the humidity is in there. It's got a lock on it, so it'll tell me, well, it won't tell me, but I'll know if the kids get into it, and I can lock it. And I know that long term, I've got 5, 6, 7-year-old boxes of cigars in there, and they're in perfectly good, healthy shape. They're aging, they're kind of marrying with themselves and other cigars in there, but those cigars are not going to destroy themselves because of poor storage. On the downside is both the Winador, which is hundreds of dollars, and the Tall Tower, which is thousands of dollars, are very expensive. I'd rather spend that money on cigars. Just saying. So, but both of those make excellent furniture if you want to have a furniture quality, something that looks really good in the house. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of variations on that. We had a friend in my cigar buddy group that had a dining room hutch, you know, with a glass front, and he turned that into a humidor, and it was really good, but it was notorious for leaking air, and it wasn't really airtight. I got another friend, God bless Marco, if he's watching, who put an insert in his dining room into the wall, and it's called a wallador, and he's got like a 2-by-4-foot wall of cigars in his dining room. Yeah, wow, I'm impressed. Talk about furniture quality. That's there. Although when he moved, he had to leave it behind because it's still there. I don't know if it's being used now, but there you go. So let's say you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on a humidor. You want to spend thousands of dollars on cigars. Well, you can get a little box like that for $100 or $2, and you can see it has the analog, which I would get rid of. It has that thing that you were saying you drip the water in like every 5 days, and it's a pain in the butt. Get rid of that, throw a Bovita pack on top of the cigars, and slam it shut. This particular one is lined with what they call cedar, so it might have a cedar aroma a little bit, and it's also got a double lip and a nice quality hinge. A good way to judge that is take a dollar bill and close that lid with the dollar bill halfway through and see if you can pull the dollar bill out. If you can pull the dollar bill out, air can get out, and it's not very well sealed. The higher quality ones, you can't hardly pull anything through them. They're really well done. The Spanish cedar that everyone talks about, a lot of us have bought cigars, probably like Fuentes, that are wrapped in cedar. That's not cedar. And if you have a cedar-lined closet or a hope chest or a drawer in your dresser that's cedar and you smell it, you're smelling white, yellow, or western cedar, which is very aromatic and it's very porous, and it'll suck the humidity out of the air. That's why people put sweaters in it, to keep moths out and to keep humidity away from their food, away from their clothes, so that the clothes stay dry and the material stays good. This cedar is called Spanish cedar, and it's not even cedar. Technically, it's a part of the mahogany family. It's got a very subtle, slightly sweet aroma that's actually mahogany, and it's not as porous as your western cedar. That's the only cedar you want to use. If you want to hand build a humidor, don't ever go to the hardware store and ask for some western cedar to put in your humidor. That's not going to be good for your cigars.
Go to Crosscut Hardwoods.
Oh, Costco hardwoods.
Crosscut
Oh, crosscut is, yeah.
in Seattle, and you can get whatever you want.
You can get Spanish cedar, they call it generically. It's really a part of the mahogany family. They can cut it very, very thin, like veneer thin for you, and you can line a well, I'll show you here in the next step what I did.
I got a couple of pieces from Amazon.
But unfortunately, if you're like me, I get more and more cigars, and I fill up my tower, and I fill up my humidor, and then I go, oh no, what am I going to do now? I just spent my last $100 bill on a box of cigars, and I don't want to buy another humidor. So I run down to Walmart or Costco or Fred Meyer, and I get Tupperware. And you'll notice this Tupperware has a rubber gasket around it to make it airtight. That Tupperware is fantastic. Before you start using it, wash it out good with soap and water and dry it out good. Don't worry about seasoning it or any of those things. Oh, I'll talk about seasoning in a bit too. Because this is just a hunk of plastic, but you want to get the plasticky smell out of it. Then you throw your cigars in there, and you throw a Bovita pack in there, and then you snap it shut, and you're good to go. I've got, was it Nathan has he has a Coolador, the Leaning Tower of Cooladors, or Leaning Tower. He's got so many, they're all piled up on top of each other, and we used to joke with him about it. I can't remember what it was called now, but those work great. They're like $10. So you get some of those, and you can store permanently, temporary. If the cigars go away, you just got extras. If you need more, you can go buy more. Or if you want to get a real nice, well-built humidor for about $150, you can go to Costco and get a I think it's Igloo that makes this 165. Yeah, I'm leaving everybody on edge here. Got to light that cigar. That's actually about this tall. And you can see it stores a lot of cigars. That cedar is Spanish cedar that we got in veneer thickness. Screwed it down. My good friend Ray Peters helped build these. Ray and Jeremy, and a whole bunch of guys. And every time we made one, we changed it around and improved it. We put wooden slots on the side. We put racks in there. I bought trays made of Spanish cedar to house cigars. I got boxes. I got bags. I've got my little hygrometer sitting in there. And that snaps shut, and it's airtight. Wow. And it holds a lot of cigars. So we call that a coolador, and there's tons of variations. You don't have to put it upright. You could just lay it down like a cooler would be and just throw stuff on there. But then I always want the cigar that's in the bottom. So I put mine up on end. One other thing I wanted to talk about is when you have a wooden humidor, whether it's a desktop or bigger, they'll tell you at first you have to season them. All seasoning is doing is bringing the humidity level up to your 70% or 68%. All you need to do that is take a paper towel or a sponge and just gently wipe some distilled water on all the wood. Do it once, let it absorb for an hour, do it again, do it 2 or 3 times until that water doesn't get absorbed anymore, because basically when those things ship, that wood is very, very dry. It needs to be humidified. Also, after you've done that, there's a Bovita, a seasoning Bovita called, it's like a starter kit, 84%. You put the 84% in there, you leave it until the hygrometer says 70% stabilizes, then you throw that out and you throw your cigars in. You're done. That's the most work you should ever have to do with a regular desktop humidifier. So, I just came back from Columbus, Ohio, where I took a bunch of cigars, and This was one of them. It went through too much shock. But the one thing that I used wherever I went more than anything was this, which you see up there. This is just a 3-cigar sleeve. It's lined with Spanish cedar, and I can fit 3 cigars in there, typically what I'm going to smoke for the evening. But more importantly, what I put in there that's more vital than the cigars. So you got not an airtight environment. It's pretty airtight, surprisingly so. This thing is, I put this in there in May or June of this year, and it's getting a little stiff. It needs another one. But this just slides in there, and the cigars just slide in next to it. And these cigars stay in remarkably good shape. Simple, simple, simple system, and you can carry this in your coat pocket or wherever. It doesn't take up a lot of space. So if you want a 3-cigar travel thing that you can fit in your pocket, if you just come into a herf somewhere, you're going to a lounge, that's perfect. The next step up, and you've all seen these, this is like bowling ball material. There's various sizes from 5 cigars on up to 40, 50, 60 cigars. They're all airtight. They impart no odor or any changes in them. They snap shut real good, and I'll show you, for instance, here's mine, and you'll see the one thing I have in there is Bovitas. I used to have that little disc up there and the hygrometer. I threw all those out. I put the Bovitas in there. I can put 3 deep rows of cigars, and they're even padded by the foam. I've never had a problem with foam taking away or adding to the flavor of a cigar. So this stuff, I'm sure it'd be a good idea to air it out a day or so when you first buy one of these, but you're good to go. It's got a rubber gasket all around it. It's airtight, and it snaps shut. And in my case, I carry 15 cigars. I don't carry as many cigars in this as some people do, because I have long-term storage, as you could see with those other things. So if I think I'm going to smoke a cigar or share a cigar over the next week or so, I'll pop in whatever I want to smoke. Or if I'm at a cigar store and I buy cigars and I want to take them home, I'll throw them in here and forget about them till I'm lighting up another cigar. So for traveling, 3 cigars up to 40 cigars, you're good to go. It's simple. It's foolproof. Don't leave this in the package tray of your car. Don't leave it in the sunshine in your car. Typically, I'll put it in the trunk because bad boys can't see what's in the trunk of my car, and it's out of sight, out of mind.
Sorry, do you, when you're using that travel case, do you put a Bovita pack on each level?
Yes, I do. I have at least 1 Bovita on each level. I don't know that it's necessary because that foam the air travels right through it, but I like, and you know, I've never had a problem with putting a Bovita right on top of a cigar. It doesn't hurt the cigar. It doesn't make one side moist and the other side dry. It's a fantastic product. So I'll put a Bovita in each level, and I use 69. There's also 72s, but I like my cigars a little less humid. The 72 is too spongy for me. So yeah, that's exactly what I do. And I always take this in the house with me at night. And that way, the next day, if I want to add a cigar or two, it's there in front of me. I don't suppose it'd hurt if you left it in the car overnight, depending on the environment you're in. But do them a favor. They're your good friends. Don't abandon them. Bring them in the house with you at night.
Well, just think of it as if you were to, each one of those cigars represents money, so think about it that way.
Bingo.
Would you leave $300 sitting in your car?
Yeah, you're right. So, some of the tips and tricks, I might have gone over some of them, but this will help me refresh. Like I said, it's always better to keep it on the full side than on the empty side. Your humidification system is not humidifying the cigars, it's humidifying the air around the cigars. The more air around the cigars, the bigger the job is for the humidification system and the harder it is to do. So however big you've got a system, try and keep it on the full side. Cool and dry is better than wet and warm in terms of the atmosphere it's in and the air it's around. It's easier for it to bring the humidity up than it is to, like if you're in Florida in the summertime. Or I used to live in Arizona. You know, if you're not in an air-conditioned house, it's 100 degrees. Those cigars are going to launch a beetle attack on you and a mold attack. So the damage that can be happening if it's cool and dry is much, much less. You can always bring it up later on. The damage is much, much less if it's cool and dry than it is if it's wet and warm. If it's wet and warm and you start a mold cycle going, you've ruined, what was it, $300 worth of cigars real quick. Leave it alone. Don't fiddle with it. You don't have to open it every day. The Bluetooth hygrometers are brilliant. You don't have to go inside to see what the humidity is, and you don't have to mess around with it. Oh, what the hell is Spanish cedar? It's mahogany. So we already talked about that point. Humidor seasoning, especially in a wooden environment, is essential. These little Boveda packs or whatever kind of packs you get, they're not up to the task of bringing a humidor up from 40% humidity dry wood to 68 or 69. Do yourself a favor, get them well seasoned. I don't know how it could possibly be that you'd over season it. You're just not going to do it unless it starts dripping water. It's that wood is designed to just absorb that moisture.
What does mold look like?
Mold. Oh, good question. Sometimes, and there's some cigars in there that people put a premium on that have
Plume?
plume. Thank you. That word was up there and wasn't coming out. They're little tiny white dots or blue dots on the surface, and when you blow them out, it's just like an ash. It's not. There's no evidence of it underneath it. It doesn't attack the wrapper whatsoever. Mold is the wrapper turning a color, and it spreads more like a rash than a little dot. So plume is okay, and you'll see that in cigar stores. You'll see it in cigars you've left for a long time. It'll just brush off. It won't hurt you, but mold will hurt you.
What color is it typically?
Mold has a greenish look, a greenish yellow.
Typical green
It
mold.
looks like mold.
Okay.
You'll know
I
when
just
you
wondered
see
if
it.
there was like a particular
When you
Well,
see it, you'll know.
mold.
You know, like bathrooms, I've seen black mold. I've never seen black mold on a cigar. Typically, it's more of a yellowish, greenish hue, but it's actually embedded in the wrapper leaf itself, and you can't get it out.
Too warm
You
and
see
too
mold,
moist.
you try and wipe it.
Isn't. Too warm and too moist.
Too warm and too moist, and mold. Mold can start forming easily at 75 degrees, 75% humidity. You've got a mold factory going on.
Unfortunately, in Washington State, a mold can start in 24 hours here because it's everywhere in the area.
It's in the air.
Yeah, places like Florida probably not going to happen as easy, but or Arizona even.
Arizona.
But here, we grow mold better than anybody.
I saw a lot of mold, not cigar related, but just household related in Texas, South Texas. I see a lot of mold on the East Coast, even up like in Boston or
Yeah.
But mold won't come off. I mean, you can try and rub it off, and it's down in there. It's not going away until you pull that wrapper leaf. Not only that, it spreads incredibly to everything.
Yeah.
So once it's launched itself, it'll just,
The spores are just.
the spores will work on a separate box, on a separate stick, on a
They'll go
different
through
shelf.
the wrappers. The cellophane, the cellulose wrappers.
Mold will grow itself underneath the cellulose.
Okay.
Actually, I've seen more mold under cellulose than I've seen in raw cigars, because
And
raw
spread
cigars.
to other cigars.
Yes. Oh yeah. That cellulose has a breathing,
Porous.
and it's yeah, it's pretty nasty, and it grows real easy. So cello doesn't help. Usually, I see mold underneath cello. Yeah.
Scott made a comment
Never
and
seen
said plume rubs right off and leaves no mark.
Right.
Mold doesn't and damages the wrapper. Plume is caused by the sugars in the wrapper coming to the surface, and it's a sign of a well-stored cigar.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, what cigar? Well stored.
Well stored.
Yeah, plume you can actually farm, and there's cigar stores that charge extra for a cigar that's got plume on it, because they've kept it like 6 months to a year, and it's in a back room, and they go, oh, we got some with plume for 20% more. We don't do that here, of course, but some places. So, what are some of the best practices for cigar storage? For instance, half-smoked cigars. Please don't put a half-smoked cigar in your humidor. Put it in a baggie. Put it in one of these. That'd work okay. But I didn't know this, but a lot of people buy 7x70s and 8x80s and only smoke the half of the cigar. They bought the cigar so they'd have something for tomorrow. And they smoke half of it. If you do that, and this is very important, when you let the cigar go out and it's only halfway done, take your cutter, like a guillotine cutter, go down below the smoke line and cut till you see nothing but tobacco. If it's still black and charred, you didn't cut down far enough. So get all the black charred stuff out, and you'll be doing your cigar a favor and your taste buds a favor. And then store it. Still, I wouldn't store it with, because there's juices and tar and stuff that came down through it. It'll have a bad influence on
I really
the
don't know
cigars.
to have smoked cigars.
So,
Scott stated
It's a no. No.
because mold spores, like beetle eggs, are present and dormant in the cigar, so they are already inside the cello.
So, what do you do? Where do you store these babies? Acid. Flavored cigars.
On their own
There's tons. Wait a minute. Let me take
in the backyard.
let me take a brief moment. Ah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh. What the heck is that?
At Christmas, it's peppermint.
Blondie Maduro. That's weird. Here, everybody. Hey, does this smell funny to you? Whoa.
Which was this one?
That's disgusting.
So, well, no, there's some people that really love that.
Just don't.
But imagine putting, let's pass that around. Imagine putting that in your humidor with your non-flavored cigars. Guess what happens? It doesn't take long for that to soak in to all your other cigars. As a matter of fact, and this is a business side. If you go to a cigar store where they smoke cigars, like this room, and they smoke cigars in the same room where they store cigars, and they're in glass shelves, humidors like we've got up in our cigar store, the smoke from the room will change the flavor of the cigars that are in those shelves, because a customer comes along, I want to buy a My Father, I want to buy a Perdomo. Give me 2 of those Padrones and give me some of those Liga Privadas. I got to open the cabinet. The air rushes in. I close the cabinet. That air is impregnated with stale cigar smoke that's already been smoked, which doesn't smell as good as the fresh cigar smoke that we're puffing. So that will have an effect on, from a commercial end, if you see a cigar store, we don't prohibit smoking in the cigar store, but we don't encourage it. 1 or 2 cigars going on once in a while, but if we did something like this up in the cigar store, that would be to the detriment of all the cigars we're trying to sell and brag about and say, oh, this is a great cigar. Oh, it just tastes like stale smoke. Ugh. So, do not store your flavored cigars. Get a Tupperware, get a different humidor, put them all in there. They'll be happy as a bug in a rug. If they have different flavors, you may want to put them in different Tupperwares. No big deal, but that will have an influence on it. Outgassing cigars. When I was in Nicaragua in 2018, I had 2 boxes of cigars rolled for me, and they were fresh from the factory. And the day they rolled them, they were delicious. And then they went through something called a sick period. The sick period is they outgas, where the ammonia ages out of the cigar for 3 to 6 months to 12 months. But to address what Vince mentioned earlier, I had 1 box that I took the cello off of. They were all done outgassing in 3 months. I had the exact same cigar rolled the exact same day that I left the cello on. It took 6 months for them to outgas. And even then I could taste a little bit of ammonia residue. So if you keep the cello on, it will slow the outgassing or the aging process down by 50%. Now, if you've got cigars that you want to taste fresh 4 years from now, keep the cello on them. If you've got cigars that you want to age quicker, they'll age twice as fast if you pull the cello off of them. I generally keep the cello on because I never know when I want to smoke them, and if it's going to last 7 years as opposed to 3.5 years, I'm voting for that method. But the cello will make a difference on outgassing cigars. Storing boxes. Do you keep the cello on them? Do you take the cello off? Do you leave them in the box? Do you take them out of the box? These are all controversial questions that we all discuss for ages. But let me tell you from practical experience, if I buy a box of cigars, I gotta have one. Right? I got a brand new box of Padrones, and yeah, I'm gonna save these for later, but I wonder what they taste like. So I gotta have one. So what do? I peel that cello off that box. It's just the nature of the beast for me. I pull out 1 cigar and then I put the box back and I leave the cigars in it. I'll even put a Bovita in that box and put it in my humidor. So as a practical matter, there's nothing wrong with taking the cello off the box. If you bought 2 boxes, take the cello off of 1 box and leave it on the other box. It'll keep things more stable for a longer period of time. So that's my personal experience on storing boxes. When I get a cigar box down to about halfway, there's a lot of air in that box. I will take those cigars out just to save space, and I'll put them in a tray on a rack, and I'll take that box out and give it to my kids, and I wish they'd make a guitar out of it. Unfortunately, they make jewelry boxes out of it, so it doesn't really matter that much. But that's my observations on what the cello can and can't do. Bottom line, a lot of cigar manufacturers put cello on their cigars, not because of the taste or because of the humidification or any of those things. It's physical bumping and moving. Even if they're just on a tray, if you're looking at other cigars and they roll around, I notice it's easy for an uncellowed cigar to get a nick or a chick or a rip or something on the wrapper. And physical damage is the main reason for cello. It stops physical damage. And if that saves a $10, $20 cigar, God bless it. That's fantastic. I'd also mention, Vince and I were just talking about we're bringing in the 90th Padrones, and they all come in tubos. A tubo will slow the process down and protect it, but a tubo is not a humidifier, and it's not a humidor. There's people that come in here and buy cigars in glass tubes because they're not going to smoke it till Christmas. You're really, the odds are against that cigar is going to stay fresh in a tube. It may stay fresh in a tube for up to a month. But basically, they're for decoration, and they're basically for decoration and protection of the cigar.
It depends on the cigar too, because if you're buying a Byron, the Byron and Atabey, they have a patent. They have a patent on their tubos.
I'm so
And
glad
they
you brought that
They
up.
are individual humidified units.
And that's the only manufacturer that I know of
They
that
have a
actually
patent on it.
puts a humidification element in every single stick in their tubes. And that's when you pay $35 for an Atabey in those tubes, probably $10 of that went into the construction of the tube that it's in. It's actually an active humidifier with a little moisture moving channel in it, and it'll keep a cigar. Now, if I put that cigar out in the sun, it's got an uphill battle. It's going to have a rough time. But if you keep it in a cool, dry place, in the shade, in the house, in a protected environment, that'll last a year. Those things are magnificent.
Scott said his best practice is to unwrap the boxes, leave the sticks in the cello. And a fun fact is that cellophane breathes 4 times slower than naked sticks.
There you go. So I said half, but he's absolutely right. It gives you a 400% aging increase. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. By the way, I don't know where Scott got that shot of that ashtray, but I want that ashtray so
I have
bad.
one of them.
What kind of ashtray is that?
I ordered it off Amazon.
That is beautiful. Is it heavy?
Yeah. The only
Sweet.
bad thing about it is it's got a felt bottom, which means you can't stick it under water, but you can wipe it out with a wet paper towel or something for cleaning it. But it's nice ashtray. Yeah.
That's furniture quality. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Scott asks, what about storing tubes in the humidor with the cap off until you are ready to transport?
Sounds like a lot of work. And where did I put that cap? God, where'd that cap go?
And how do you keep it from getting
But
crushed?
it's a good point, Scott. If you want, you'll allow the cigar to breathe with the rest of the cigars in the humidor instead of being stuck with the tubo. Although the tubo shouldn't hurt it any. It should stay relatively the same. But if you're worried about that and you got some tubos, keep the cap close by. Because when you want to go or typically I'll grab it and just smoke it. So
I would just leave it. And put the tubo in the humidor and leave it, because the air around the tubo is gonna. If the tubo is breathing, if there's something leaking out, it'll pull it back in too.
well, the point that to Scott's point is there's a lot of glass tube gurkhas that are wax sealed, and that wax seal will stop the gurkha from getting acquainted with proper humidity, assuming it was improper in the first place. The only thing that should really change the humidity on that is temperature variation, which could wreak havoc with it, which isn't going to happen in the humidor.
Yeah, one of my things with tubos I think are one of those things that need to be smoked the day you buy it, the day or day after you buy it. I've never heard of someone aging tubos.
But people buy them
I know.
because they're not going to smoke it for a month.
Right.
Or, I had a guy come and he says, I'm going to Hawaii in a month, and he bought a whole box of tubos to take to Hawaii, and that was his humidification system for a month from now, hoping those cigars would all be fresh after they flew on the airplane for 4 hours. So, yeah, but you're right. There's a lot of that. Not only that, this time of year, when tubos are bought as gifts. They're going to sit somewhere under a Christmas tree until December the 25th. And that's a long time for it to expect the tubo to take care of itself.
But it's better than not being a tubo.
That's
and doing
true.
the exact same thing with it.
Yep. So they do buy them And it's a lot of non-smokers buy them as gifts, and they may sit for a while. And then the guy that got it, or the lady that got it, might just say, "Oh, this will be good for Easter," or "I think I'll have it Memorial Day." And hopefully they have a humidor.
So Scott's comment was, I think tubos were invented for golf course outings and same-day smoking.
Lingo.
Yeah.
Thanks for the golf course comment, Scott. You're absolutely right, because a lot of the people that come in, they have funny shoes on, and spats. So they're on what?
Bowling shoes.
Am I right, Pat?
No, you don't wear your golf shoes off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's bowling shoes he's thinking.
Yeah.
He's thinking of bowling.
But they all have a T in their pocket.
Do they have
I bought a
numbers on
bunch
their
of tubos.
No. That I know that's bowling.
I bought a bunch of tubos 100 years ago to take on a motorcycle trip when I couldn't fit a humidor into the little limited luggage space I had.
Smart
And
move.
it was physical damage that I was more concerned about than, I knew they weren't going to be in great shape, but they were going to be in better shape than they would be outside of a tube.
So, somehow, God bless Scott, and I hope that, I guess Scott's seeing this. How many streamers we got? Do you know?
6.
All right, yay, streamers! This is cool.
I'm one.
Oh, okay. So Scott found this photo. This is in the patio area on the first floor of the Los Arcos Hotel in Esteli, Nicaragua, in February of 2018. And right there with his hand on his head is Scott. And there's Bud in the purple shirt next to him, and a bunch of the other cigar smoking buddies. There's me writing stuff down, like so-and-so didn't light his cigar properly, so I wrote it down. And you can see right up here, next to Marco, is a travel door. Right over there is another travel door. Next to Eric, I think, and Mandy. And we were having a ball in Nicaragua. And we came back with, I had to borrow a suitcase from a friend. The guy bought so many cigars, I couldn't fit them all in my suitcase. We had a blast. So traveling with cigars is a fun thing. It shouldn't stress anybody out, and it's all about enjoying the cigars. These are the various, and I'd say if you don't have a humidor and you just want to keep cigars in good shape, the Tupperware is a $10 solution. Easy peasy. If you want some nice furniture, look at some of the high-end wooden tabletop humidors, or the tower, or a Winador or a half tower. If you really want capacity, like Ray has 3 of those 3-foot high cooler doors in his garage, and they're all full, maxed out. There's just tons of things you can do. I've got a footstool, these cloth footstools from Costco. Inside of the footstool is all storage. It's filled with Tupperware. So I don't have to say, show the embarrassing fashion faux pas of Tupperware all over the shelf. It's down in a footstool. I just open the footstool. Each Tupperware has different brands of cigars. I just grab what I want, and I'm off to the races having fun. So that's pretty much tonight's presentation. And I really am soliciting and asking if anybody has any input, feedback, or ideas of things they do to store their cigars that I hadn't thought of or we hadn't run over with this evening. Does anybody, how do you all keep your cigars? You all have humidors or Tupperware, or you just buy 1 or 2 at a time? What do you do, Vince?
I put them in my shirt pockets in my closet with a Bovita pen.
Oh.
No, I'm joking. I have a Tupperware. I have 2 22-quart Tupperwares that are actually totally waterproof, airproof.
Yeah.
And they have 6 clamps on them, and I have trays in there, and I have a bunch of pieces of Spanish cedar in there.
What's your oldest cigar?
Oh, probably two and a half years old.
And you've never had any problem with
No. My place is air conditioned. I was in there today, and I tend to like my humidity a little higher than 69, so I use the 72s.
okay.
I got in there today, and my hydrometer said it was 66 degrees and 70% humidity.
Bingo.
Yeah, so it works great, and I think I got these things on Amazon, and I paid about $20 each, $15 each for them. They're great. And I just have them sitting next to a dresser in my bedroom.
Any other questions about things that you've run into that are crazy that you'd like better information on?
There's I don't know if you've ever met Rick over at the Educated Cigar in Tri-Cities. I don't know if you ever ran into him, but he way back in the day he would store all of his. He's a big online retailer. If you go to theeducatedcigar.com, and you'll see everything that he has. But he stores almost all of his cigars are stored in freezers. He has them all in freezers. The cellophane's on them, and they're in the freezer.
Are they frozen?
No,
They're
they're
the freezer's not plugged in.
no, the freezer's plugged in,
Really?
and they're cold. But that's how he stores his cigars, and he has for ages. He's been doing cigars for about 35 years, and so when you get a box from him, it'll be cold. And he's like, yeah, just let it sit out and do its thing. Just leave it in the cellophane. Let it do its thing. Bring it up, and they're just fine. I mean, I've never had a problem with anything that I've ever purchased from him, and it's one of those things where, all right, it's a great way to store them because that's what he's done forever. Now, if he had raw sticks, he would never do that. It's only boxes that are wrapped in cellophane that go in his freezers.
Oh, gotcha.
But as soon as they come out of the freezer, they go in his humidor. He has a walk-in humidor.
And his big enemy, his two huge enemies, this thousands and thousands of dollars, is beetles and mold. And in that cold environment, neither one of those problems will ever exist for him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know consumer level casual guys that'll throw cigars in a little Ziploc bag in their freezer or in their refrigerator. I do not recommend that because you're going to take them out and you're going to 5 minutes later cut it and light it, and you're going to have a bad experience.
Yeah.
But in his case, in the retail environment, he's protecting his assets. Whole different ballgame.
Oh yeah, he's
Plus,
totally.
sounds like he's conditioning them before he smokes.
Oh yeah, before he recommends it that when he sends it, like he'll send it to somebody. A lot of his clients are back east, and so it's a 2-3 day shipping process. And when it arrives there, he wants it to make sure it's it's going to be good, fresh one.
Question: that cigar that you passed around?
Yeah.
So had it not destroyed itself, if it was still in a smokable condition visibly, but it had gone through what you had put it through, how long would it need to be rehabbed in a humidor before you would have felt comfortable smoking it?
Probably 10 days.
Okay. So if you buy cigars from someplace in Pennsylvania and they ship them to you, and they spend 7 days or 5 days in a truck.
Been there, done that.
Okay, so how long do you recommend that they be?
I dry box them for a couple of days, and 7 days is my routine. I dry box them, which is just leaving them out sitting in the air in a constant indoor environment. I'll dry box them, and then the next day I'll put them in a humidor, and I'll wait a week before I start smoking them. I think that's easy. And
what's the reason for the 1 day of dry boxing?
The reason for the 1 day of dry boxing is so that they can slowly acclimate and the wrapper doesn't split open.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not supercharging them with more humidity.
Because you're
if they were at
they're
40,
too dry,
yeah,
and then getting too much humidity too quickly.
You don't want nothing extreme.
Okay.
Yeah. So I like to dry box cigars just before I smoke them. I let them sit out for maybe 45 minutes or an hour just to acclimate to the room.
Mhm.
Tons of times, it's pretty cool up in the cigar store room
Mhm.
because the cigars like 68 degrees better than 72, and it gets pretty warm, like the temperature is in here.
Yeah.
I advise the guys to wait 45 minutes before lighting it, and when they don't, I get guys every night come back with this because they ran down, they took it from a cooler, moisture environment, they cut it and they lit it, and it blew up on them. Happens every day, and they blame me.
Well, yeah, we bought
But
them.
the customer's always right, so I just
Give
said,
them another one.
here, have another one. Why don't you just let it sit for a half
Yeah,
hour?
yeah.
You'll enjoy it more. Yeah.
There's one time I bought a and I'll just say this, I bought a grab bag from here, one of the things, and I went to my buddy and I went and handed him a cigar, and a beetle crawled out.
Oh.
And
Aren't
so-
you glad you didn't put that in your humidor?
And no, the funny part was, it was the first time. So it's the first time, and I've been smoking cigars a long time. It's the first time ever that I've actually seen a tobacco beetle.
Wow.
The very first time, and we took pictures of it, the whole 9 yards. This is a little tiny guy, and we were able to actually get a picture of it. I brought the whole pack back, and I said, "Here, this is what you." I can't remember who I showed it to, but it was funny. I go, "That's the first time ever
Wow.
that I've seen one," and I had a box of Joe's for 10 years.
On sale today, special cigars, extra protein.
Extra
Yeah.
protein, yeah. But,
Scott,
but it's pretty rare to ever see a tobacco.
Yeah.
Scott said cigar factories will put newly wrapped sticks in a deep freeze for 3 days to kill beetles.
Yep.
Yeah, they flash freeze them.
Yeah.
And then they bring them back up. And they do cold storage, but not frozen cold storage. You're right that right when they're rolled, they'll throw them in this big meat locker thing, and it's basically a flash freeze.
So, like New Orleans Cigar Company, which is Payless Cigars online. If you look at Payless Cigars on the New Orleans Cigar
Whoa,
Company,
do they sell shoes? They just went out of business.
I mean, they might have.
Yeah.
But with all their cigars, when they ship them, the box would always come to be frozen, because it is a freezer storage is where they keep them.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're going all right. And they have pictures in their factory. It's all of cold storage where they keep everything.
Any other questions or concerns or curiosities about taking care of your cigars? Has everybody had cigars that they've had for years? Or do you smoke them quicker than that?
Little
Yeah.
both.
I can't keep up.
Yeah, well, there's that. I have a few, but mostly the ones I have that are really old, I forgot I had them. Or I'd have smoked them already. Anybody have any thoughts about what would be a good topic for December next month that you'd like to hear about or discuss or do some research on?
You know what would be good is, what do you buy? Here's a good question. I always get this. You get someone that hasn't had cigars before.
Ah,
And so then you go, what do you buy that person? They want to try them or whatever. What do you buy that person? Because you want to start them out light, because you give them something on the Maduro side, they're all gonna cry. You know, they're just
Give
gonna
them that flavor.
Maybe
make
do
them
like
sick.
product variety.
Yeah. Well, because and then there's
Oh, like a
like the
sampler.
number one sellers are acids, and you just go on and on and on retail wise. And you look at it, you know, that whole thing with the flavor. I don't like flavored cigars at all.
Give them Swisher Sweets.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
do
would
like
never do that.
cigar. You could probably do like gauges, like different gauges.
Yeah.
well, good question. And I run into this every day. And two of my, first of all, if it's someone that hasn't had a cigar, you talk to them about, there's a Nicaraguan taste profile that's pretty robust to the Nicaraguan product. There's a milder, more subtle taste profile to the Dominican product. And then there's variations of all that, Honduras, the Brazil, the Mexican, all those things. So I point out that usually the lighter Connecticut shade cigars are much less nicotine and much less likelihood of overwhelming the smoker. Two of my favorites are, if you really want the Nicaraguan taste profile, Perdomo Champagne. If you really want to compare that to a Dominican Honduran taste profile, Macanudo Cafe.
Mm.
Both of those cigars stand well on their own. The Champagne has taste and really gives you that Nicaraguan flavor. But that's not important. What's really important is if you give the newbie one of each, they can judge for themselves what kind of taste profile hits their sweet spot. Is, oh yeah, this Dominican, this is nothing like that Perdomo was. So that's the difference between Dominican and an original Fuente is a good example of Dominican without too much nicotine. Some of the lighter Fuentes, 858s come to mind.
Yeah, looking at the Oliva, there's an Oliva that has a CMS that has that lighter.
Yeah.
And the whole cigar is nice and light. I don't know if that's Dominican.
Yeah, those original, especially the Connecticut. Generally, if I look at cigar ratings, I'll see that Maduro and Sun-Grown have ramped up nicotine levels compared to Connecticut. But that's not always true. If you go to an Ashton, by the way, just about any, except for the VSGs, the basic Ashtons, very mild, tasteful, good examples of Dominican cigars. The Ashton Maduro is by far the lightest nicotine Maduro in the shop. So a person that says, yeah, that dark cigar really looks kind of macho, man, I think I'd like to see. If not only that, they're going to know there's a taste difference. So I get them an Ashton Maduro, not a lot of nicotine, less nicotine probably than most Connecticut shades. La Galera Connecticut's are La Aurora factor, their Dominican Republic taste profile. So here's a newbie that's actually starting to say, oh, that's kind of cool. This is Dominican, this is Nicaraguan. Those are the two big variances that you can actually taste. And flavored cigars, acids are their own. There's a lot of people that love them. A lot of people started out on acids. But there is a cigar called the Rough Rider. There's a Baccarat, which is a sweetened tip. The Rough Rider is a sweetened tip, so it's got this sweet, easy to digest sensation, and underneath it, it's nothing but pure tobacco, and it's very mild tobacco. There's a cigar called the Black Bottom Betty and the Crazy Alice. Those are not flavored cigars, and they taste like chocolate bars, but they are sweetened, and that sweetened sensation, along with that Nicaraguan tobacco, tells your brain, hey, I think I'm sensing a note of chocolatey goodness. So people come back in the Crazy Alice's, they go for them over and over and over again. Then someday they just come in and say, you know, I think I'll try something new. And so then they go, they launch from that easy to get started with. So for the newbies, I would say typically if you can get them more than one cigar, definitely don't get a variety pack from some company that was all made in Nicaragua. Where's the variety there? You may have different wrappers, but if you get them a variety pack of different countries, it's almost like a parallel to French wine versus Spanish wine versus California wine versus Northwest wine. I wouldn't know the difference if somebody just blind tasted me. But if I was told that this is French and this is California, I'd taste the two and go, ah. So all of a sudden you started a fun hobby for somebody that didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
So that's just my personal
I only run into that maybe once, twice, roughly, because most of the guys I deal with, they're all smokers. So
I get young people in here all the time. One of them smokes Liga Privadas all day. Another one says, I never had a cigar, but I sure want that Liga Privada. No. You don't want that Liga.
Let's start with that and knock them on their butt.
So I get a lot of groups, like 3 or 4 people, and they're typically young, and that's exactly the approach. You know, the guy that's experienced is the reason they even got in there. They want to hang out with their buddy, and he won't stop talking about cigars, and they go, God, you know. So give them something to start out, and sometimes on the same night, they'll come back up from the lounge, and they'll want a stronger cigar. And then they throw up. Yeah, it's fun to watch.
Would you recommend? I mean, the other thing to think about is if they don't know how to cut a cigar.
No, I generally will show that.
Yeah,
too.
but if they're not, I mean, some
I show my
cigars are
attorney
harder
Yeah.
to successfully cut, like a single capped.
I just recently got my guys biting
Here's a
off
fun
the ends
thing.
instead of cutting them. So they're biting off the ends now.
I've been playing
Awesome.
this with newbies. Pigtailed cigars. The reason pigtails they're mostly just for looks. But the original purpose for a pigtail is you twist it, and if you're careful, on a larger ring gauge, it'll twist and it'll take the cap, and it won't take any of the filler or binder. That's kind of cool. Another thing that's kind of cool is a lot of people come in and they're hunters. Okay? Hey, you got a shell casing? Go get a shell casing of the size you like, camphor it, and then the other side of the camphor, you get the and you twist the camphor till it gets a sharp edge on the casing. Twist that casing down on the cigar, and you're a cool macho hunter dude that uses his old bullets to cut his cigars. And what did he have to spend? Zero. He didn't have to buy a punch. He didn't have to buy. A lot of the newbies like punches, and I like that because it stops them from cutting the cigar down an inch. And it's kind of tricky to get the guillotine cutter. And some of those cutters can cost a lot more than the cigars. And then the guy, what if he doesn't want to smoke anymore? But shell casings are kind of neat. The pigtails are kind of neat, although a lot of the pigtailed cigars are pretty strong. You don't see a pigtail on a mild Connecticut because the wrapper won't comply. But cutting and lighting, everybody comes in, and what do they ask? You got any matches? And we don't have any matches. We're trying to get some, but they're hard to come by. So, yeah, Jason.
Scott suggests another topic and says the power of beverage pairings.
The power of beverage pairings.
So possibly pairings and using a cigar flavor wheel.
Says the man who's sitting there in front of his computer with a single malt in his hand as we speak. Am I right, Scott? Yeah, you're for a newbie or for anybody that wants to get into the hobby, pairing cigars with various drinks, whether they're alcoholic or not. A popular non-alcoholic drink that pairs well with cigars, believe it or not, is root beer. It really works well. When I'm reviewing a cigar, I use sparkling water with a twist of lemon in it, and it keeps my palate fairly fresh, and it doesn't influence things. But it's really fun to pair various spirits, whether it's rum or scotch, or in my case, it's stouts. And because it's stouts, I gravitated for years towards Maduro cigars. They pair well with a stout. A Connecticut cigar doesn't. When I'm doing a Connecticut cigar, I'm usually drinking a sparkling water.
It'll still be lighter, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. Generally, the flavor profile, if it's lighter, you're gonna go for lighter tasting thing.
Some cigars go good with wine. I would suggest, rather than just the straight wine, to go with the dessert wine and a dessert. There are cigars that actually are kind of dessert cigars. Oh, this tastes like a chocolate bar. That's a dessert cigar.
He says, damn straight, he is drinking. But also he uses red wine and microbrews appropriately. The guys at work swear by Dr. Pepper.
Oh, Dr.
Dr.
Pepper.
Pepper was what I was going to say. That's what I use.
There's
Pretty
only
much
one.
he goes
Dr.
millennials.
Pepper's great.
Right.
Oh, no, try Dr. Pepper with the Maduro and tell me what you think.
Or
You
port.
know, change
Well, there's one.
Port.
Oh,
Port.
Shit, port. And,
Port.
Yeah.
really like a port or a sherry or
Yeah.
sherry.
Yeah.
One guy suggested he always smoked with Cabernet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I ordered
Cabernet.
but it was so dry that paired with the drying of the cigar, I thought my mouth was going up.
Ah,
A lot of
Water
lounges
or
serve
something on
port.
the side.
Port, I love
also,
port with
yeah.
something like that.
speaking of the drying effect, a typical Nicaraguan filled, not wrapper leaf, but a typical Nicaraguan filled cigar will cause you to salivate. A typical
Because of the spice,
Dominican, because of the,
pepper or the spice.
I don't know what it is, but a typical Nicaraguan profile cigar will cause you to salivate. A typical Dominican cigar, and I'll tell you why. The Dominican cigars with Olor tobacco in the filler with 1 leaf of Olor will dry you out and give you cotton mouth. And a typical Dominican cigar like a Fuente, you'll get a cotton mouth feel where you're thirsty and you want to drink more water, or you want to do something to wet your palate. But you're right about some wines will actually have because of the alcohol and such, it'll have a drying effect. Those you would probably want to go with a cigar that would cause you to salivate more, which would be the Nicaraguan profile. Bingo. Yeah.
Another one he said is black coffee.
Yeah, I love
Oh,
coffee.
there are so many good coffee cigars out there. And they're typically a little bit lighter, but they're also typically sun-grown. Not Connecticut so much, but the sun-grown, whether it's Dominican sun. Oh, come on in.
You
Yeah.
want to go to the store and buy one first.
Oh, yeah, do that. Buy 2. So, and another thing, Scott mentioned Dr. Pepper. There's one cigar that goes extremely well with Dr. Pepper. A high-end Padron. I don't know what it is, but that Padron taste profile of a 1926 or 1964 Padron makes me think of Dr. Pepper when I'm smoking.
Try it with the Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper's great.
Oh, yeah.
Great with the cigar.
Dr. Pepper and Padron, that's a pairing made in heaven. I've even had someone very knowledgeable tell me that Dr. Pepper is involved in the Padron process at some point. Can't prove it.
Scott says the right Cabernet with the right stick can be transcendental, but the key is the right pairing.
Yeah. And the real key is you got to keep trying for years, over and over and over again. That's the beauty of the hobby. Try different cigars with different pairings, and you never know when you hit that sweet spot.
He says Pete Johnson from Tatuaje swears by his sticks and red wine.
Red wine, yeah, Pete's a big. His sticks do go well with red wine. And coffee sticks, there are so many good. And they're typically not.
Well, there's so much good coffee too that you could pair with that.
Well, not only that, even if you don't drink coffee, there's a lot of cigars that have coffee notes in them. And if you read cigar reviews, you see one with a coffee note, grab that as a morning stick with a cup of coffee, and you're good to go.
La Cremas are really good.
Oh, yeah, La Cremas are great with coffee. Yeah, you're right. I still got a bunch of those left. Yeah, that's a great cigar. Well, hey Scott, anybody else out there in the cloud that's got any comments or feedback? Because I think we're going to go ahead and let you go here in a sec. And having said that, I'll wait for the typewriters to stop. But I really want to thank Jason again for allowing this to go out way beyond just this room. So this is kind of cool. Hopefully we can do it and repeat this. It seems to have worked okay. I don't know how good the video was, but you're able to save this video and,
I recorded
repost it.
Yeah.
Super. Pat, so glad you could make it. Thank you.
Well, thank you again. Wonderful presentation.
You're more important to my cigar corner than my cigars, so
No,
I'm glad
I
you make
hope
it.
not, but that's very kind of you. See you next time.
Same with Carolyn and Steve. God bless you for
Carolyn and Steve are huge.
fantastic. Taking the time out of your busy days smoking cigars.
I had to get up from a nap.
Yeah.
Carolyn was just funny as all get up because Steve, you gotta go. Wake up. Oh, so I woke up and she was so intent on getting here. She says, "I'll go get in the car. Wait." And so I stumbled out and got in the car. I said, "Honey, bring the cigars." Oh no, I forgot.
So, what are you smoking tonight? Oh yeah, fantastic.
Now, what's the one you recommended that you smoked?
Yeah, it's the one from last week, I think. Didn't have a wrapper or a label on it. Tough to see by some.
Dark wrapper.
Oh, that's an Illusione, La Grande something. Fantastic cigar for $5.75.
That was
Magnificent
really good.
stick.
The problem was is that I set it down, do
Yeah.
some eating, and there's just something about when I set a cigar down and then I light it up, it's just half the cigar. So the first half was really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like almost, and it feel really bad that I wasted the second half.
Ah, I see. I see.
But it was a great cigar. Great cigar. But we'll probably smoke another.
By the way,
There's no questions, so.
okay. So everyone out there on YouTube, thank you so much for attending. Spread the word. We'll try and get this up so that other people who couldn't look tonight can look at it when they want, and they can fast forward when I lose my place and all that stuff. And I know this goes, well, we pretty much kept, an hour and a half. We didn't do too bad.
Good show, Bob.
Thank you. I think next month, and we kind of sort of do this every December, but I think next month we're going to talk about cigar gifts and not just cigar.